Weapons standards food. The geopolitics of systems, from the dominance of weaponry to the sovereignty of life. The landscape of global power is undergoing a tectonic shift, moving from the historical conquest of territory to the sophisticated control of the operating systems of life. This analysis navigates the intricate structures of power, from the colossal R&D costs of the defense industry to the utilization of software sovereignty and offset agreements as high-level political leverage. As we advance into the 21st century, a pivotal strategic question emerges. Can we elevate the resources that sustain life food to a level of bargaining power equivalent to the technology that ends it? By transforming agricultural commodities into strategic security assets, we witness a new face of warfare, a struggle for biological standards and supply chain dominance. In this invisible theater of conflict, the victor may not be the one with the largest arsenal, but the one who controls the systems that ensure humanity can remain fed and functional under a peace that is as pervasive as it is imperceptible. The foundations of power, the cost of technological creation. Creating technology from the ground up begins with the investment of intellect and time, the invisible yet most expensive foundations in the world. Research and development, R&D, in high-tech industries demands more than just capital for laboratories. It involves immense opportunity costs. Statistics from the OECD indicate that leading nations consistently inject 2% to 4% of their GDP into R&D to maintain a comparative advantage. However, without a robust engineering base, the cost of trial and error can escalate exponentially, often exceeding the initial value of the product itself. In essence, pioneering a new technology is akin to wagering a nation's future. Maximizing returns, the strategy of technological life cycle. Once a technology is successfully commercialized, the goal shifts to maximizing returns across its life cycle. Initially, producers reap profits through a monopoly of knowledge, selling at premium prices to early adopters. As competitors close in, the strategy pivots to licensing and technology transfer. This allows the original developer to generate massive revenue without the risks of manufacturing expansion, while simultaneously embedding their technology as a global standard. Consequently, buyers remain tethered to the original provider for parts and system support long after the technology has matured. The hierarchy of profitability. In a comparative sense, commodities like food or grain yield thin, volatile margins dictated by global market fluctuations. Heavy industrial goods offer more stability, but require massive capital. Today, however, the pinnacle of profitability lies in intellectual property and software. With marginal costs of reproduction near zero, a single development cycle can serve millions globally without new factories. The hybrid model, bundling hardware with proprietary software, creates a perpetual revenue stream, ensuring wealth flows toward the technology owner indefinitely. Strategic margins, the uniqueness of the defense industry. In the arms trade, net profit margins typically average between 10% and 15%, not necessarily as high as pure software, but the true value lies in strategic leverage and long-term cash flow. A single arms contract often entails 20 to 30 years of maintenance and upgrades, where gross margins for parts and services can exceed 30%. Furthermore, defense exports lower the domestic cost of protection. By selling abroad, nations achieve economies of scale, as highlighted by CIPRI data, effectively strengthening their own military capabilities at a subsidized cost per unit. Offset agreements, the control of learning. In the reality of defense procurement, offset agreements are rarely altruistic gestures of knowledge sharing. They are systems of controlled learning. These are divided into two distinct levels. Surface offsets focus on local assembly or low-level manufacturing to create a veneer of technological advancement. Deep offsets involve access to design, source code, and critical know-how which sellers almost never grant, as doing so would cultivate a future competitor. The heart of an offset is to ensure the buyer knows enough to operate the system, but never enough to replicate it. For the seller, it is a brilliant industrial policy to offload legacy technology while keeping allies dependent. Assessments suggest the global offset market is worth tens of billions of dollars annually, yet it rarely fosters true upstream industrial development for the buyer. Software sovereignty, the new era of colonization. Modern weaponry in the 21st century is no longer defined by hardware, but by software sovereignty. A prime example is the US F-35 program, where mission software rights are strictly controlled. Similarly, China utilizes mandatory technology transfers to pull knowledge into its own ecosystem. Weapons today are locked by firmware, encryption keys, and remote update servers. Without the seller's digital key, a multi-billion-dollar platform becomes little more than expensive scrap metal. This is the new face of colonization, occupying a nation's defensive capabilities not with troops, but with passwords. Global standards, weapons sharper than blades. Beyond software, the modern empire controls the world through global standards. A weapon does not win solely through explosive force, but through interoperability and protocols like those of NATO. If a nation does not adhere to these standards, it becomes a strategic island, unable to coordinate with allies. The same applies to food. Standards for GMOs, food safety, ESG, and carbon footprints create a regulatory cage. Those who set the rules win without firing a shot. Nations must bow to a rule-based empire where the laws are written by the few for the many. Political shackles, the geopolitics of procurement. The most daunting threat is the geopolitics of procurement. When a nation's primary defense systems are tethered to a specific seller, its foreign policy is inevitably compromised. A buyer cannot easily pursue an agenda that contradicts the seller's interests, as the risk of losing spare parts or software support hangs like a Damoclean sword over national security. Procurement is not merely a military transaction. It is a long-term contract of political dependency. Can we make the sustenance of life, food, as strategically powerful as the instruments of death, weapons? Food as weaponry, from commodity to security tech. Elevating food to the strategic level of high-tech weaponry is possible at least in part and represents a vital path for humanity by shifting from commodities to food technology. Biological intellectual property, control over seed patents. Studies indicate that the Big Four corporations dominate a significant portion of the global seed market, effectively turning farmers into technology tenants. Edible pharmaceuticals, the rise of functional foods. This market is projected to maintain high single-digit growth, reflecting a demand for life-extending properties that traditional weaponry cannot provide. The weaponization of hunger, food and fertilizer sanctions are becoming more potent than oil embargoes. This was evident in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, where the passage of wheat became a global bargaining chip, or when fertilizer export bans destabilized food security across entire continents. A few weeks of bread shortages can topple a government faster than a missile strike. Climate as a conflict factory. Climate shocks lead to crop failures and mass migration. The World Bank notes that food price volatility can shatter state stability. Food is no longer just a trade item. It is the ultimate state security. Social stability. Food as the foundation of internal order. In the realm of domestic politics, a state that manages its food supply effectively is a state that maintains social order. Food security is the primary tool for crowd control through subsidies and price caps. Food riots are the clearest indicators of state collapse. Thus, food serves as a social weapon with more influence over a government's survival than any tank or rifle. Strategies for survival, regional alliances, and sovereignty. In a world of dependency traps, smaller nations must build bargaining power through food sovereignty. This involves investing in open-source seed systems and precision agriculture to reduce reliance on foreign tech. Crucially, nations must form regional food blocs to create collective bargaining power against tech giants. Shared supply chain resilience is the only safeguard in an era where solitary security cannot withstand geopolitical storms. From weapons to standards, the 21st century war of systems. Humanity is navigating a complex transition. The past, conquest of territory. The present, control of supply chains. The future, mastery of biological standards, genomic data, and the operating systems of life. Conclusion: the invisible peace under shackle. If we can elevate food to high-tech status, the chances for peace may increase, as bargaining power shifts from the machinery of destruction to the machinery of life. However, we must remain cognizant of the inherent ruthlessness of this new system. Food security should be a path toward common security, not a tool for subjugation. Ultimately, peace is not the absence of power, but the balanced alignment of power so that killing becomes unnecessary. Though the world may appear quieter, it is merely transitioning from a war of attrition to a war of operating systems. We have not walked away from war. We have simply entered war in an invisible form. In this century, the victor may not be the one with the most weapons, but the one who controls the systems that keep the world fed and functional for the long term.